Hey everyone, so you're here, it's 2025, and you're looking at these two phones, the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 13 Pro. And maybe you're thinking, which one should I actually buy? Or maybe you already have one of these and you're wondering, is it time to switch or am I still good for another year? It's a really valid question. On paper, they seem pretty similar, but the experience of using them, especially now a few years after they came out, well, it's a bit different. In this video, we're going to break it all down. We'll talk about the display, the performance you can expect today, the cameras, and of course the battery life. We're going to focus on the things that you should actually care about for daily use in 2025. And at the end, I'll tell you which one I would personally pick if I had to choose today. So let's start with what was so special about these phones when they first hit the scene. When the iPhone 12 Pro Max came out, it was the king. It had this huge, beautiful screen, the new flat edge design, which was a throwback to the iPhone 5, and it was the first Pro Max model to really push the camera hardware, especially with that larger sensor and sensor shift stabilization. It was a beast. Then a year later, the iPhone 13 Pro arrived. It wasn't a massive redesign, but it brought one of the most requested features ever to the iPhone, a high refresh rate display, or as Apple calls it, ProMotion. That plus some really clever camera upgrades and a nice bump in battery made it a super compelling refined package. Okay, so with that history in mind, let's get into how they actually stack up today. First up, the part you look at all the time, the design and the display. Alright, so let's talk about holding these things. The first thing you'll notice is the size. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is just bigger. It has a 6.7-inch screen, while the 13 Pro has a more manageable 6.1-inch screen. For me, with the 12 Pro Max, it's definitely a two-handed phone. The 13 Pro, on the other hand, is sort of that sweet spot where most people can comfortably use it with one hand. But the biggest difference, and honestly, the reason many people would pick the 13 Pro is the display technology. See, the 12 Pro Max has a standard 60Hz display, and look, it's a great looking screen, it's sharp, it's colorful, it's a top tier OLED panel. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But then, you use the iPhone 13 Pro with its 120Hz ProMotion display, and it's just smoother. Everything from scrolling through social media to just swiping between your home screens feels incredibly fluid and responsive. It's one of those things that's hard to go back from once you're used to it. In my day-to-day, it just makes the phone feel faster, even if it technically isn't. Another small thing you'll see is the notch. On the 13 Pro, it's about 20% smaller. Is it a life-changing difference? Not really. You get a tiny bit more screen on either side, but you get used to both very quickly. But the smoothness of ProMotion, that's something you feel constantly. Okay, so how about what's going on under the hood? This is where things get interesting. The 12 Pro Max is running the A14 Bionic chip, and the 13 Pro has the A15 Bionic. Now, let's be real. In 2025, for most of what we do, texting, browse, watching videos, even playing most games, both of these chips are still incredibly fast. You are not going to feel limited by the A14 chip in the 12 Pro Max. It handles the latest versions of iOS just fine, and apps open up quickly. Where you might see a tiny difference is in really heavy tasks. I was editing a 4K video on the phone itself, or exporting a bunch of high-resolution photos from Lightroom the other day, and the A15 in the 13 Pro is a little bit quicker. That's partly because the 13 Pro just has a more powerful GPU. What I did notice though is that when I really push both phones with a heavy load like that, the iPhone 12 Pro Max can get noticeably warmer in my hand than the 13 Pro. The A15 just seems to be a bit more efficient, so it stays cooler under pressure. But look, for 95% of my usage, I honestly can't tell the difference in raw speed. The feeling of speed on the 13 Pro comes more from that ProMotion display than the chip itself. So performance-wise, both are still fantastic performers. Alright, this is a big one, the cameras. Both of these phones take absolutely incredible photos that still hold up against many newer devices. The iPhone 12 Pro Max has a very capable system. The main sensor is large, it lets in a lot of light, and the photos have that classic slightly warmer iPhone look. The telephoto lens gives you a 2.5x optical zoom. It's a reliable point-and-shoot camera that gives you great results without much effort. Now, the iPhone 13 Pro, it took everything from the 12 Pro Max and just made it better. The main sensor is even larger, so low light photos are a bit cleaner with less noise. The telephoto lens gets a boost to 3x optical zoom, which is a nice little bit of extra reach. But the two biggest upgrades are, first, the ultra-wide camera now has autofocus, which lets you take some amazing macro shots. You can get incredibly close to subjects, and it opens up a whole new kind of photography. And second is cinematic mode. This is that feature that adds an artificial blur or bokeh to your videos, and it can automatically shift focus between subjects. When it first came out, it was a bit hit or miss, but after a few years of software updates, it's actually pretty cool for capturing videos of people. So do you need these features? Well, that's the question. For everyday photos, both are excellent, but if you're someone who loves creative options, that macro mode and the 3x zoom on the 13 Pro are, really meaningful upgrades. Okay, let's talk about something super practical, battery life. When these phones were new, both were battery champs. The 12 Pro Max with its huge body was an absolute marathon runner. The 13 Pro, thanks to the more efficient A15 chip and the variable refresh rate display, was also a huge step up and easily an all-day phone. But it's 2025. These batteries have aged. When you're buying one now on the used market, you have to check the battery health. If you can find both with, say, around 90% health, the 12 Pro Max will probably still have a slight edge just because it started with a physically larger battery. But a 13 Pro with good battery health is no slouch at all and will comfortably get you through a full day of moderate use. The key takeaway here is don't just look at the model, look at the battery health percentage of the specific phone you're buying. So before we get to the price and conclusion, a couple of final thoughts. Both of these phones will likely get software support for a few more years. Apple is great with that, but the 13 Pro, being a year newer, will logically be supported for 1 year longer. So if you plan to keep your phone for the absolute maximum amount of time, that's something to consider. Also, the weight. The 12 Pro Max is a heavy phone. The 13 Pro is a bit lighter and better balanced. It's just something you feel over time. Alright, let's talk money. This is probably the deciding factor for a lot of you. Looking at the used and refurbished market in 2025, the iPhone 12 Pro Max generally starts at around $300. The iPhone 13 Pro being a year newer and having those key upgrades, but because it's not a Pro Max model, it's having the same price as 12 Pro Max, so you're looking at no difference. The question you have to ask yourself is that same price worth it for what the 13 Pro offers? So at the end of the day, which one should you get? Here's how I see it. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is the perfect choice if your top priorities are getting the largest screen possible and the best battery life for the absolute lowest price. It's a fantastic media consumption device, the performance is still great, the cameras are reliable, and you get that huge immersive display. The iPhone 13 Pro is for the person who values refinement and the overall user experience. That 120Hz ProMotion display is for me a game changer that makes the entire phone feel more premium and responsive. You also get a more versatile camera system with that better zoom and macro mode, all in a more comfortable one-handed size. So my personal choice, if I were spending my own money today, I would spend my cash and go for the iPhone 13 Pro. That ProMotion display is just too good to pass up, and the camera upgrades feel significant enough to justify the cost. The more comfortable size is just the cherry on top. But honestly, you can't go wrong here. Both are incredible pieces of technology that still offer amazing value in 2025. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Which one would you choose? Or if you have one of these, how has your experience been? Let me know down in the comments. If you found this video helpful, a simple thumbs up would be amazing, and consider subscribing for more videos just like this one. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.